Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. Previously, Daze found himself inside his own book and was only freed after he brought the story to its correct conclusion. Once out, he was told that he is a reincarnation of a famous author and must now fight the monsters that intend on destroying all the books in the world from the inside. The story continues as we see a group of guys bowling, and one of them, named Yoji, is easily distracted by the mention of a girl. Yoji would then ride the bus one day and find himself completely enamored by a girl reading a book. He would see her again another time and notice that the book is called Setting Sun. Yoji would later desperately search for this book in the library, but he misread the book's title as Settling Sun. Yoji has clearly never been inside a library before, but luckily Daze arrives to tell him the real name of the book. He also explains that the author is Osamu Daze. He reveals that Daze is incredibly famous and tells him to never forget the name. Daze directs him on where to find the book, and Yoji is left to think about how strange that person was. That night, Yoji would begin to doze off reading the book, but Daze arrives to scold him for falling asleep reading one of his books. Daze instructs him to read the book all in one go, as he is the type to forget everything if he doesn't. Yoji is furious to see that he has broke into his house, but Daze points out how he better hurry since he knows that he won't have the courage to talk to Haruka if he doesn't. Daze disappears, and Yoji would go on to spend the rest of the night reading the entire book. The next day, Yoji confidently talks to Haruka about the book, and they would go on to visit the exhibition of unforgettable literature. There, Haruka would explain how the author, Osamu Daze, was a cheapskate and would always leave bar tabs and food bills to his friends. Daze is furious to hear his reincarnated self being talked about that way, but makes sure he isn't found. Haruka goes on to talk poorly about him, calling him a degenerate, and revealing that he failed at 2 lover suicides, killing both women. They both conclude that he is a loser, but can't deny he was an extraordinary writer. She believes that it was because of his inability to fit into society that made him able to create such amazing books. This is because, in her eyes, someone who's a slave to society can never write a work that shocked it. Later, Yoji would reveal that he is jealous of books because she only seems to care about them. Haruka then explains that she is glad that he likes books, since these days the world is filled with all types of entertainment. It's rare that someone chooses a book, and she hopes that he will continue reading more. Sometime later, Yoji would learn about the author Chuya Nakahara. He is told that Chuya was unrivaled in his ability to use a limited amount of words to describe an incredible amount of meaning. Chuya is glad to hear his work being understood, but Yoji would turn to find that he must have been hearing things. Afterwards, Yoji searches for his next book, but is shockingly met by 2 authors that both want him to choose their books. That night, we see that Yoji and Daze have become good friends, as Yoji teases Daze about his well-known mischievous past. The two enjoy each other's company, but we see that the setting sun is turning black. Yoji and Haruka would grow much closer over the coming days, and the same would go for him and the authors. One night, Haruka would explain that many people find joy in interacting with each other, but she can't find fun or value in that. She believes that they are the ones doing things properly, and she is the one that's wrong. It was when she was most upset about this that she found Osamu Daze's work. It helped her feel like she could turn a life she wasn't happy with into one she liked, even if the world didn't see her as a human. She credits the books for giving her life value, but Yoji points out how special she is for seeing so much in those books. He has found value in books as well, since they helped him find her. That night, Yoji thanks Daze, but doesn't give his reason for why, and we see that his book's title has changed to No Longer Human. The next day, Yoji is shocked to see words disappearing from books and entire books going missing. He desperately calls Haruka to explain that something has gone missing, but he can't explain what. All he knows is that it was something important that helped him change completely. Haruka apologizes, but states that she doesn't want to talk right now and hangs up. Books continue to disappear, and all other attempts at contacting Haruka fail. He feels completely empty inside, but is then shocked to see Haruka walking nearby. Haruka climbs the steps of a large building, and we hear how she thinks of her life as a complete failure. She explains that she had found something that made her think her life had value, but states that it's gone now. Yoji reaches the top of the building to find Haruka on the ledge, and the two stare into each other's eyes. We see that the book they shared has been destroyed, and Haruka shockingly jumps off the building. Yoji sees what she has done and collapses on the ground. The rest of the world's books begin to vanish as Yoji's teacher teaches another lesson. He explains that literature is not necessary, but a world without literature would be a very boring place. Just then, Akutagawa wakes from a dream and is told that he is in a book. After delving, he was almost immediately defeated by a taint and devoured by the world. The director explains that he had to go inside their minds to awaken them, and the method he used was a dream. Akutagawa wonders why he was the only one that woke up, and the director believes it might be because he has a stronger connection to the Alchemist. It's uncertain if that dream was personal for the Alchemist, but they must move on now. The director entrusts the fate of the book called Howling Moon to Akutagawa, and Akutagawa wakes up Daze. Akutagawa explains to him that the book's author is Sakataro Hagiwara, and the place they are currently in is all of his unique worlds blended into one place. A strange dog is following Daze, and the others explain that animals can sense when another creature is weaker than them. They then chase down the sound of a pistol and are horrified to find that Chuya has been shot. Chuya begins to talk but explains to everyone that he has been shot and is most certainly dead. Akutagawa thinks he might understand what's happening as he states that Chuya might have died as part of the events of the book. Chuya couldn't care less about the reason and just wants help as he points out that he can't move. Daze thinks about how they might be able to help, and Ango hilariously suggests they dig him a grave. Akutagawa suggests that they solve the mystery of who shot Chuya, but explains that it won't be easy. The fact that they were all captured the moment they delved, and all the spontaneous things that have been happening, suggest that the taint is manipulating the world itself. That has never been heard of before, but either way, they must solve the mystery in front of them. Daze is ultra enthusiastic to solve the case, but Chuya is quick to remind him that he needs to take his murder more seriously. Everyone assumes that the murder weapon is the gun, but Daze explains that the correct thing to do is immediately question their assumptions. He does just that and shocks everyone as he reveals the real murder weapon, a chair. Daze then shocks everyone even more as he reveals that the killer was a frog that transformed into a human and beat Chuya to death with the chair. Daze believes he has solved the crime, but is then shocked to see everyone trying to wake him up as he is actually the one that was shot. Everyone tries to figure out who would have done it, but determine that Daze has too many enemies to list. Chuya mocks Daze for being shot by a gun, but Tosan is then the one to consider that someone might have hit him with a chair. They then attempt to list all the people Daze had angered, but again there are too many. Ango then notices a strange clam and it begins to talk. It admits to being the one that killed Daze, but we then see that Ango is the one that has been shot this time. Chuya assumes that Ango must have been stabbed in a fight, but Ango states that he would never lose a fight. Akutagawa then notices a strange tear and instantly attacks it as he states that this world is under the taint's control. Sakutaro reveals himself and those in the library grow concerned for the Delver's safety. They decide that they shouldn't go in, but point out how strange it is that anyone can delve inside this book without restrictions. We then hear as the Alchemist explains to the director that what a book seeks is a connection to an author. If it allows anyone to enter, that means that the person it most wants to connect with isn't there. It's similar to how a child wants a toy. If it isn't the one you want most, then what they are makes no difference. Just then, another author named Sase arrives to greet the director. Inside the book, Sakura recites a poem while the authors do their best to fight off the taints. This proves to be extremely difficult as the army of taint soldiers turn out to be the undead. Chuya manages to take some of them down but is eventually grabbed. Akutagawa and Daze are attacked by the bamboo in the forest and find that it is a seemingly endless fight. Sakura finally reveals himself and Daze begs him to stop attacking since he is clearly being controlled by the taint. Everyone is shocked, however, to hear Sakura state that he isn't being controlled and he is actually working with the taint of his own free will. Daze points out that his book will just end up being destroyed, but Sakura seemingly doesn't care, and they are sent down a pit. Akutagawa apologizes as he can't hold back any longer, and unleashes a powerful attack. Akutagawa then finds himself face to face with Sakura, and Sakura begins to explain how upset he is that a poet named Sase stopped writing poems. He blames himself as they were once friends, and Sase started writing novels instead of poems after they met. They fight as Sakura blames his own poems for making Sase quit, and now he just wants to see all his own books destroyed. Sakura and the Taints have the same goal, so Akutagawa realizes that by convincing an author to join their side, the taints were able to gain full control over the world. Sakura is convinced that Sase will continue to write poems again if his books are destroyed, but Sase himself arrives to threaten the taint behind it all. Sakura explains that this is what he wants, but Sase points out that that can't be true, since Sakura's book was calling him, and that's why the director was able to reincarnate him. The taint demands that Sakura shoot Sase so that the book can finally be destroyed, but Sase manages to defeat the taint first. Sase explains that he didn't quit writing poems because of him, and it's only Sakura's arrogance that makes him think that. Sase vows to never let anyone destroy Sakura's books, even him, and Sakura apologizes for being so selfish. Afterwards, Akutagawa was glad that they were able to save the book and also another author, but the director reminds him that his true goal is to recover his memories. This fact is undeniable, but Akutagawa points out that if he keeps saving books, then someday he'll save the people who the books will save. He thinks that this is very valuable, and for now that is enough for him. Sometime later, Daze is caught trying to reach the Alchemist, and explains that since the Alchemist was the one that brought them there, then he should be able to send them back. He explains that Akutagawa and himself can handle the taints on their own, and the others could just go home. Someone else arrives to pause the conversation, and moments later we watch as Daze writes one of his famous angry letters. This one is to Akutagawa, and he explains how the newcomer named Mushena Koji arrived early knowing everything about his role as an author. Daze continues the letter to explain that Mushena Koji isn't the problem though, and goes on to state that another author named Shiga arrived as well. Shiga and Akutagawa are clearly old acquaintances, but Daze is very upset by this. Chuya sees that Daze is in a bad mood and points out how Daze never did like Shiga. Nearby, it is discussed how Daze's hate for the one known as the god of novels is well documented. A while later, Chuya is stunned to see Daze come to him and thinks things must be really bad. Daze explains that he doesn't get along with Chuya either, but Shiga's 1,000 times worse. Chuya then gives him some advice, and we then see that Daze has approached Shiga to ask if he would like to go to a room in the library that has a beach. Shiga thinks this is a bit strange and recalls how the up-and-coming author Osamu Daze once tried to drown himself to death. The person with him died and he survived, so many people speculated that it was murder. Daze is completely insulted as he states that it won't be the same this time, and accidentally blurts out that this time he has a plan to kill him. Chuya is disappointed to watch Daze crash and burn, and Shiga states that he won't be going to the beach with Daze. Akutagawa arrives to greet the two of them, and Shiga explains that he was just reading Akutagawa's book again. Shiga then shocks him as he asks where he got the idea to write such a piece of garbage. He continues to criticize Akutagawa's writing, as Akutagawa points out how he is just as critical as ever. Daze becomes furious as he defends Akutagawa, but Shiga states that Daze doesn't really know anything about him. The two fight for a bit but are soon stopped, and the others point out how fighting each other was inevitable as they are in a confined space with a limited variety of food. It is explained that the Alchemist did this on purpose, since if they had too much to do then they would become too lazy to work. After some debate, they all decide that farming would be best in order to get some exercise while also growing food. Daze bickers with Shiga once more, and they challenge each other to see who could grow the best crops. Daze's team decides that it would be best to grow rice for the meal, as they all love rice so much and could eat it any time of day. They all thank Chuya for the idea, but we then see that Chuya really just wants all the sake that can be made from the rice. The other team asks Shiga what they will be growing, but Shiga reveals that he has never grown anything in his life. Sakura is then the one to step up as he decides that they will grow squash. The competition escalates and Daze receives a letter from Mushena Koji. It explains how mad he is that Daze is slacking off while forcing his team to do all the work, and it states that he will get mad at Daze in person later, even though he is standing right next to him. Their crops then begin to grow rapidly as they use an accelerometer, and Chuya thinks about how all he has to do is harvest the rice early in the morning before the others get there. Unfortunately for him, he arrives the next morning to find that all the rice had already been harvested. The others are surprised as well and rush to find that Ango was in the kitchen. Daze is shocked to hear that Ango used all their crops to make his dish, and is left wondering what he will do about the competition. Nearby, we see that Sakura had the same idea as Ango and cooked up a dish, but his teammates don't think it tastes very good. He explains all the ingredients he used, but that just makes things worse. The judges arrive soon after and shockingly reveal that the winner of the competition is Takuda and Shimazaki's team. No one even really noticed them, but they point out that they were there the entire time. Afterwards, Daze explains that he hates Shiga so much because of how he talks about Akutagawa's books. However, Akutagawa states that he thinks Shiga might be right. He praises Shiga by explaining that his description of a scene is more real than a photograph. Akutagawa then shocks Daze by stating that his own novels are worthless. However, before he can state how they should all just be destroyed, he collapses. Daze can't understand what is happening at all, as Akutagawa is shockingly consumed by black flames. Thanks for watching part 2, 3,000 likes and I'll make a part 3.